Hey guys, I'm so glad you're here today because today I'm going to show you how to properly sharpen Woodsman Broadheads. Trevor said he couldn't make it today because he said he's on vacation, so it's just me today, so you're stuck with me, but that's okay because I think you're going to get some benefit out of these tips I have for you when sharpening your Woodsman Broadhead or any 3-blade broadhead for that matter. We got 3 Woodsman Broadheads here that are in really bad shape, but today we're going to get them razor sharp. Now I'm not the best at sharpening in the world, but I have learned a couple things here and there, and I think we can get these so sharp we'll have no problem during hunting season. One thing Patrick taught me from MT Knives when I went to his shop is what sharp actually means. Most people think you have a sharp knife or a sharp tool when you are able to shave hair, and he said, that's nothing, like that's a dull knife. What's actually sharp is if you can cut your hairs in half without touching your arm. I was like, what? So that is the level of sharpness we're shooting for today. What tools you use are far less important than how good you are at sharpening. You could use little diamond stones, you can use sandpaper, you could use bigger diamond stones. It doesn't matter nearly as much of what kind of tools you're going to use as it does how meticulous you are at getting the blade really sharp. If you have the right tools, it will go faster, but without the right tools, you can pretty much use anything around the house. A rock, a stone will sharpen something. I could probably even use this lamp base here, and if I rub it long enough, I'll probably get it sharp. So don't worry about the tools as much as focusing on actually getting the broadhead sharp. The basic idea when you sharpen anything is that you have your blade right there, blade point, and the goal is to take off material until it rolls the tip over this way. That's where you get the bevel on the other side. And then you're gonna take material off this edge of the blade to roll material back. And what you're doing is you're rolling it back and forth, making it thinner and thinner and thinner until that comes to an extremely thin point. And that is what makes razor sharp blade. So we're rolling this end over, But if you sharpen one side and switch one side without making an actual bevel, you're not gonna be making near as much progress on a blade. Another tip he gave me is in order to feel bevels, it's a lot easier if your hand is wet. So just get some water, get your hands wet, and you can feel that bevel a lot more. And that's how you know when to switch to a different side of the blade when you're just starting out, either on a file or a rough stone or a low grit sandpaper. If you want to, you definitely can screw an arrow on to the broadhead so that as you sharpen, you can hold it. The only problem with this is there's a chance that you lift up the front or the back and don't put enough pressure on it. So what you can do is grab in the center, put pressure there, and then use it to help you go back and forth. The other option to hold the broadhead is gonna be both hands on it. It's kind of small, but if you can get 2 fingers on it, I think that's the best way to get even pressure along the whole broadhead. I find that to work out much better than with the arrow. Less room for air and allows you to sharpen the whole thing consistently. The nice thing about 3-blade broadheads just like this one is that you can sharpen 2 edges at the same time. What that means is that your cutting angle is not going to be as steep as generally what a 2-blade broadhead is. If I do the math right, we've got 6 sides here and 360 degrees. So I think that gives me a 60-degree bevel on each cutting surface, which is a really wide angle bevel if you're talking about sharpening knives in general. I think that's even wider than generally a hatchet or an axe would be sharpened. But the benefit of that is that it's going to be a lot less likely you're going to get chips on your blade because it's a wider angle. It's going to make that blade a much stronger, which for broadheads I think is perfect because this, when you get it razor sharp, it's gonna have no trouble with that wider angle getting a complete pass through on any deer or elk or anything like that. So I like this wider angle because it allows me to sharpen my broadheads each year instead of buying new ones. This one I shot a deer with last year and it wedged into its shoulder, but it only bent the tip a little bit, and I'll be able to sharpen that up perfectly and use it again this year. You can use some kind of lubricant or cutting fluid if you want. I don't think it makes that big of a difference here. On this broadhead, you can see which areas are getting shiny, and those are the areas that's touching. So there is a little divot here in the middle section, so we want to sharpen it until it's all shiny along the whole edge. Another way you can test that is you can grab yourself a Sharpie, run your Sharpie on that cutting edge, And then as you sharpen, and you'll see which parts are touching your sharpening stone or sandpaper and which parts are not. And then when the whole thing is shiny again, you can move on to the next side. Another good option, glue sandpaper on a piece of wood, and then you can use that. And then just move from your lowest grit up to your highest grit. It is irrelevant on the exact grit. You just want to make sure you get that bevel before you move on. The most common mistake in sharpening anything is moving on too soon, and then you're at the highest grit, and then you never roll a bevel in the first place, and so it's not sharp at all after you're at 2000 grit. And you think it should be razor sharp, but it's completely dull. And then you get frustrated when really you were just so close to getting it really sharp. You just need to stay low until you get that bevel and then work your way up. Now that we've moved up all the way to 2000 grit, you can stop there and you do have a really sharp broadhead, or you can continue going. Lots of people will use different things. What I'm gonna use today is a piece of leather. And so I've got a piece of leather here. I do not have white mold, as some people call it, or jeweler's rouge, or whatever you call it. It's that white compound, but I did want to add something to it, so I added some oil, just some mineral oil on there. Then with the leather, you really want to put down a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure, come back, come back, come back, and this is gonna get it so sharp. It's gonna be cut through anything like hot knife and butter. You just want to do backstrokes, because if you push forward, you're gonna be cutting the leather, and that's no good. You can do it 30, 50, 100 times each side. I think it's good to do it about 50 times, nice and hard on each side. 2 hands, keep the pressure even, go hard on that, and then you have a glistening, sharp broadhead. Thank you for joining me on this video. Go sharpen your broadheads, because when I stepped outside today, I smelt it and I felt it, and it made me smile, and I wanted to run and jump for joy. And if you're anything like me, you know exactly what I'm talking about.